Dr. Amanda Cole sat at her desk reading reports when her computer made a soft beeping sound. She looked at the screen and saw an urgent message from Dr. Kevin Walsh. The subject line read, "Emergency Discovery, Luna Base." Amanda felt her heart beat faster. Kevin never sent urgent messages unless something big had happened. She opened the message and began to read. Construction workers digging on the far side of the moon had found something strange buried deep under the lunar soil. Metal pieces that looked nothing like human technology. The pieces were huge and covered in symbols no one could understand. Kevin needed her team at Luna Base right away. Amanda stood up and walked to the window of her office. She looked out at the Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. As the chief scientist who studied alien remains, she had seen many strange things over the years. But something about Kevin's message made her feel excited and worried at the same time. She called Dr. Lisa Barnes, who worked in the office next. Told her. Lisa was the best person she knew at figuring out alien languages. When Lisa answered her phone, Amanda could hear papers rustling in the background. "Lisa, we need to pack for Luna Base. Kevin found something big." "How big?" Lisa asked. "Big enough that he used the emergency communication channel." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Lisa knew that channel was only used for the most important discoveries. "I'll be ready in an hour," she said. Amanda's next call was to Dr. Ryan Mitchell. Ryan studied alien materials and could tell her what the metal pieces were made of. He answered on the first ring. "Ryan, cancel your weekend plans. We're going to the moon." "What did they find?" Ryan asked. "I don't know yet, but Kevin sounds scared." The trip to Luna Base took 6 hours on the fastest transport ship available. Amanda spent the time reading Kevin's detailed reports. The workers had been digging a new section for the base when their machines hit something hard. At first they thought it was just a large rock. But when they cleared away the dust and dirt, they found smooth metal covered in strange markings. The metal pieces were not small. The largest one was over 50 feet long and 20 feet wide. The construction crew had stopped all work and called the science team immediately. Kevin had arrived first and taken preliminary scans. What he found made no sense. The metal was not from Earth. It was not from any known human colony. The atomic structure was unlike anything in their databases. Even more strange, the pieces showed signs of extreme damage. Holes that looked like weapon hits. Burn marks that suggested intense heat. Whatever these pieces came from had been in a terrible fight. When Amanda and her team arrived at Luna Base, Kevin was waiting for them at the landing pad. His usually neat appearance was disheveled. His hair stuck up in different directions, and his shirt was covered in lunar dust. He looked like he had not slept in days. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Kevin said as they walked toward the excavation site. "What we found changes everything we thought we knew about Earth's history." They rode in a small vehicle across the moon's surface. The excavation site was in a valley between two large craters. As they got closer, Amanda could see bright lights and several people working. But what caught her attention were the metal pieces lying on the ground. They were massive. Much larger than Kevin's reports had indicated. The pieces were dark gray, with a blue tint that seemed to shift in the artificial light. Strange symbols covered every surface. Some pieces were clearly parts of a hull. Others looked like weapons or engine components. "How many pieces have you found?" Lisa asked. "Over 300 so far," Kevin replied. "And we've only excavated about 10% of the site." Amanda walked up to the largest piece and placed her hand on its surface. The metal felt cold even through her glove. The symbols were carved, deep into the surface, not painted or etched lightly. Whatever made this ship had built it to last. "Ryan, what can you tell me about this material?" Amanda asked. Ryan was already running his scanner over different sections of the wreckage. He frowned at the readings. "The atomic structure is incredibly complex. This metal is stronger than anything we can make. The manufacturing process would require technology we don't have." Lisa was taking pictures of the symbols with her special camera. "These markings are definitely a language. The patterns repeat in ways that suggest grammar and syntax. But it's unlike any alien language we've studied before. Amanda walked around the excavation site looking at different pieces. The more she saw, the more questions she had. This was clearly wreckage from some kind of spacecraft. But it was huge, much larger than any human ship ever built, and the weapon damage was extensive. "Kevin, have you found any indication of what caused this damage?" she asked. Kevin led her to a section where several pieces lay close together. "Look at these burn marks," he said, pointing to black streaks across the metal. "The heat required to make these marks would be enormous. And see these holes? They go completely through the hull. Whatever weapons made these hits were incredibly powerful." Amanda studied the damage patterns. The burns and holes were not random. They showed a specific pattern that suggested organized attack. This ship had not crashed by accident. It had been destroyed in battle. "How old is this wreckage?" Amanda asked. "That's the strangest part," Kevin replied. "Carbon dating suggests it's been here for about 800 years. But that's impossible. Humans didn't have space travel 800 years ago. We were still using swords and horses." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. 800 years ago, Earth was in its medieval period. Humans were fighting with primitive weapons and had no knowledge of space travel. Yet here was evidence of an advanced alien spacecraft that had been destroyed near Earth during that exact time period. "We need to excavate everything," she said. "Every piece, every fragment. And we need to do it quickly and quietly. If this is what I think it is, it will change how we understand human history." As the sun set behind the lunar mountains, Amanda's team began the careful work of uncovering the rest of the alien wreckage. None of them could have imagined what they would find buried in the ancient battlefield on the moon's far side. 3 days later, Amanda and her team had uncovered enough wreckage to fill a small warehouse. The alien ships were even larger than they had first thought. The pieces they found suggested the original vessels were the size of city blocks. Ryan worked day and night analyzing the strange metal while Lisa struggled to decode the alien writing. On the 4th morning, Kevin came running to Amanda with excitement in his eyes. "We found something incredible," he said, breathing hard. "The command center of one of the ships is almost completely intact." Amanda followed Kevin to a new excavation site where workers had carefully removed tons of lunar dust. Below ground level was a section of spacecraft that looked like it had been buried carefully rather than crashed. The walls were covered in strange panels with dark screens and control surfaces. "The power systems are completely dead," Kevin explained, as they climbed down into the alien command center. "But the data storage units seem to be undamaged. If we can figure out how to access them, we might learn what these aliens were doing here." The inside of the alien ship was bigger than Amanda expected. The ceilings were high enough for humans to walk comfortably, which seemed odd. Most alien species they had encountered were different sizes than humans. The walls curved in smooth lines and everything seemed designed for efficiency. Lisa stood in front of a large panel covered in the same symbols they had seen on the outside of the ships. "I think this might be some kind of navigation station," she said. "The symbol patterns here are different from the ones on the hull, more complex." Ryan was examining a cube-shaped device about the size of a briefcase. It was made of the same strange metal as the ship but had no visible damage. "This could be a data storage unit," he said. "The internal structure is incredibly complex. It might contain the ship's computer files." Amanda looked around the command center and tried to imagine what had happened here 800 years ago. The room was arranged for multiple crew members to work together. There were what looked like seats designed for beings roughly human-sized. Control panels were positioned where hands could easily reach them. "Kevin, have we found any remains of the alien crew?" Amanda asked. "No bodies yet," Kevin replied. "But we did find something strange." He led them to another section of the ship, where the walls were covered in dark stains. "These marks test positive for organic compounds. We think they might be bloodstains." Amanda studied the dark marks on the walls. They were splattered in patterns that suggested violence. Something terrible had happened in this room. "How many of these command centers have we found?" she asked. "This is the 3rd one," Kevin said. "All of them show similar damage patterns, weapon strikes from the outside and signs of fighting on the inside." Lisa had been working quietly at her portable computer, trying to match the alien. symbols to known languages. Suddenly, she looked up with surprise on her face. "I think I've found something," she said. "These symbols here repeat in a pattern that looks like numbers. If I'm right, this might be a date or timestamp." She pointed to a series of symbols carved into a metal plate near what looked like the captain's chair. "Based on mathematical principles that seem universal, I think this translates to approximately 812 years ago." Amanda felt her pulse quicken. The date matched their carbon dating results exactly. But there was something else that bothered her about the timing. "Lisa, what was happening on Earth 800 years ago?" "The 13th century," Lisa replied. "The time of knights and castles. The Crusades were happening. Most people lived in small villages. Technology was very primitive." Ryan had been working on the cube-shaped device while they talked. Suddenly it began to glow with a soft blue light. "I think I activated something," he said nervously. The device projected a three-dimensional image into the air above it. The image showed a star map with hundreds of points of light. One system was marked differently from the others. Amanda recognized it immediately. "That's our solar system," she said quietly. The star map zoomed in to show the inner planets. Earth was clearly marked with symbols that pulsed red. Lines connected Earth to other marked systems throughout the galaxy. As they watched, the display changed to show what looked like fleet movements. Hundreds of small dots moved from various systems toward Earth. "This is an invasion plan," Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. The display continued to show more information. Ship designs appeared next to the fleet movements. The vessels were massive, armed with weapons that could destroy cities. Population counts for dozens of worlds appeared, with Earth's medieval population highlighted. Lisa translated some of the text that appeared with the images. The symbols here seemed to indicate Earth was designated as a target for conquest. The alien species called themselves. She paused, struggling with the translation. "The best I can translate it is the Zephyrians." More text appeared on the display. Lisa worked frantically to translate it. "It says Earth was chosen because it had a large population but primitive technology. Easy to conquer and enslave. The invasion fleet contained over 200 ships." Amanda stared at the holographic display in horror. 200 massive warships had come to enslave humanity 800 years ago. Ships with weapons that could level mountains and technology far beyond anything humans possessed. Ryan had found another data cube and activated it. This one showed detailed scans of Earth from space. Medieval cities and castles appeared in the hologram, along with population estimates and resource calculations. The aliens had studied Earth carefully before their attack. "They knew everything about us," Ryan said. "Our military capabilities, our population centers, even our political structures. This was a planned conquest." The display changed again to show what appeared to be battle plans. Earth's major population centers were marked for attack. The invasion strategy was methodical and brutal. The aliens planned to destroy all military resistance quickly, then establish control over the surviving population. But something had gone wrong with their plan. Amanda could see that from the damaged ships surrounding them. Somehow, impossibly, the Zephyrian invasion had failed. Lisa activated a third data cube. The display that appeared was different from the others. Instead of crisp, clean images, this one showed damaged text and broken recordings. It appeared to be some kind of battle log or emergency communication. "The text here is fragmented," Lisa said as she worked to translate it. "But I can make out words like unexpected resistance and heavy losses. There are references to primitive vessels and impossible tactics." Amanda walked closer to the holographic display. The battle log showed increasingly desperate communications from the Zephyrian fleet. References to human spacecraft appeared multiple times, which made no sense. Humans in the 13th century had no spacecraft. One message that Lisa translated made Amanda's blood run cold. "Human forces have boarded our vessels. Repeat, humans are fighting inside our ships. This is impossible. How did they reach us?" The final entry in the battle log was short and written in what Lisa identified as the Zephyrian equivalent of panic. Fleet command is gone. Over half hour, ships destroyed. The humans fight like demons. We underestimated them completely. This is our final transmission. Amanda looked around the damaged command center with new understanding. The Zephyrians had come to Earth with overwhelming force and superior technology. They had planned to enslave humanity quickly and efficiently. Instead, they had all died here. The question that haunted Amanda was simple. How had medieval humans with swords and horses defeated an advanced alien armada in space? The answer to that question was buried somewhere in the wreckage around them, and she was determined to find it. The breakthrough came on the 7th day when Kevin's excavation team found something that changed everything they thought they knew about the battle. Mixed in with the alien wreckage were pieces of human-made objects. Not modern human technology, but crude metalwork that belonged to Earth's medieval period. Amanda knelt beside a piece of twisted iron that had been fused to part of an alien hull. The iron was rough and uneven, clearly made by a blacksmith using primitive tools. But it was shaped into something that looked like a weapon, with sharp edges designed to cut and pierce. "This is impossible," Ryan said, examining another piece of human metalwork. "This is definitely medieval iron. I can tell by the carbon content and the forging methods. But how did medieval weapons end up attached to alien spacecraft?" Lisa was photographing symbols carved into a large piece of wood that had somehow survived 8 centuries in the vacuum of space. "These aren't alien symbols," she said excitedly. "This is Latin. Medieval Latin." Amanda read the carved words over Lisa's shoulder. Even with her limited knowledge of Latin, she could make out some of the meaning. It says something about defenders of Earth and a great battle against invaders from the stars. Kevin came running over with a metal object in his hands. It was clearly human-made, with the rough finish of medieval craftsmanship. But the shape was wrong for any weapon or tool Amanda knew from that time period. It was long and narrow, with what looked like a control mechanism at one end. "We found this attached to what appears to be an alien fighter craft," Kevin said. "The human-made parts seem to have been welded directly onto the alien technology." Amanda studied the strange hybrid device. It looked like medieval humans had taken alien components and tried to build their own version of advanced technology. The result was crude but functional, showing signs of actual use in battle. Ryan discovered more evidence as they expanded their search. Pieces of armor made from iron and leather were scattered throughout the wreckage. But these weren't normal medieval suits of armor. They had been modified with strange additions that looked like they were designed for use in space. "Look at this helmet," Ryan said, holding up a piece of metal headgear. "It's been sealed around the edges and has what looks like a breathing apparatus attached. Someone tried to make a spacesuit using medieval technology." Lisa found more carved messages on pieces of wood and metal throughout the site. As she translated them, a story began to emerge that seemed impossible, but was supported by the physical evidence around them. According to these inscriptions, Lisa said, Earth's kingdoms received warning of the alien invasion from something they called sky messengers. The various kings and lords put aside their wars and united under a leader, named William Fletcher. Amanda had never heard of William Fletcher in any history book, but the name appeared repeatedly in the carved messages Lisa was translating. He seemed to have been some kind of military commander who had organized Earth's defense against the aliens. The most shocking discovery came when Kevin's team uncovered what appeared to be the remains of human-built spacecraft. The vessels were incredibly crude by modern standards, built from wood, iron, and other materials available in medieval times. But they showed clear signs of having been used in space combat. "This is unbelievable," Amanda said, walking around. "The largest piece of human wreckage." Medieval humans built spacecraft, actual functional spacecraft. The human ships were much smaller than the alien vessels, but they had been armed with weapons that seemed to have been effective against advanced alien technology. Amanda could see where human-made projectiles had punched through alien hull plating. Ryan analyzed the construction methods used in the human spacecraft. "They used alien technology salvaged from scout ships," he explained. Somehow they figured out how to integrate alien power sources and propulsion systems with medieval craftsmanship. Lisa had found a large wooden beam with extensive writing carved into its surface. The message was long and detailed, written in several different languages including Latin, Old English, and what looked like Old French. "This appears to be some kind of battle plan," Lisa said as she worked to translate the text. "It describes tactics for fighting the alien fleet. The humans knew they couldn't match alien technology, so they developed strategies based on surprise and sacrifice. The battle plan described how human forces had used captured alien scout ships to learn about Zephyrian technology and weaknesses. They had discovered that the aliens were not prepared for close combat and had built their ships with minimal internal defenses." Amanda read over Lisa's translation with growing amazement. The medieval humans had developed tactics that were both brilliant and terrifying. They planned to ram alien ships with their crude spacecraft, then board the enemy vessels with armed knights wearing improvised spacesuits. They turned their technological disadvantage into a strategic advantage, Amanda realized. The aliens expected long-range warfare with advanced weapons. Instead, the humans brought the fight close where medieval combat skills were more useful, or Gao. Evidence supported this theory as they continued excavating. They found alien weapons that had been damaged by human swords and crossbows. Scorch marks on alien hull plates showed where human forces had used fire-based weapons inside enemy ships. Kevin discovered what appeared to be the remains of a command post built inside a captured alien vessel. Human furniture and weapons were scattered throughout alien control rooms, showing where medieval warriors had established bases inside enemy ships. "The final battle must have been incredible," Ryan said, examining burn marks on both human and alien wreckage. Primitive wooden ships ramming advanced starships. Knights in spacesuits fighting alien soldiers with swords and axes. Lisa had translated enough of the written records to piece together the basic story of the battle. William Fletcher had united Earth's scattered kingdoms and convinced them to contribute resources for building a defense fleet. Using technology salvaged from alien scouts, they had constructed crude but effective spacecraft. The human strategy had been simple but effective. They knew they could not defeat the alien armada in traditional space combat, so they developed tactics that played to their strengths. Human ships would sacrifice themselves to get close to alien vessels. Then boarding parties would fight their way inside using medieval weapons and tactics. Amanda found evidence that the strategy had worked perfectly. The alien battle logs they had translated earlier showed increasing panic as human forces boarded ship after ship. The Zephyrians had been prepared for advanced warfare, not for hand-to-hand combat with armored knights wielding swords. The final piece of evidence came when Kevin's team uncovered what appeared to be the flagship of the human fleet. It was larger than the other human vessels and showed signs of having been heavily modified with alien technology. Carved into its wooden hull was a message in Latin that made Amanda's heart race. Lisa translated the inscription, "Here lies the vessel of William Fletcher, defender of Earth, who led humanity's greatest victory against the stars themselves. Let this be remembered until the end of time." Amanda stood among the scattered wreckage of two fleets and tried to imagine the battle that had taken place here 8 centuries ago. Medieval humans with wooden ships and iron weapons had faced an advanced alien armada, and won. It was the greatest military victory in human history, and almost no one knew it had ever happened. The question now was what to do with this incredible discovery. Amanda knew that revealing the truth about humanity's forgotten triumph would change everything people thought they knew about their own history and capabilities. Amanda was preparing her research report when 3 men in dark suits arrived at Luna Base. They had not scheduled a visit and had somehow obtained clearance to land without going through normal procedures. The lead man introduced himself as Colonel Jack Harrison from Earth Defense Command. "Dr. Cole, we need to talk," Colonel Harrison said as he walked into the excavation site. His eyes moved quickly over the alien and human wreckage scattered across the lunar surface. "Your discovery has attracted attention from the highest levels of government." Amanda felt a chill run down her spine. She had expected her findings to be important, But military involvement meant the situation was more serious than she had realized. "How do you know about our research?" she asked. "We monitor all archaeological work involving alien artifacts," Colonel Harrison replied. "When your team started finding evidence of medieval human spaceflight, several alarm bells went off in our security systems." Kevin, Lisa, and Ryan gathered around as Colonel Harrison explained why Earth Defense Command was interested in their discovery. What he told them changed everything they thought they knew about human history and Earth's place in the galaxy. "This is not the first battle site we have found," Colonel Harrison said. "There are similar locations throughout the solar system, on Mars, on several asteroids, even in the outer planets. All of them show evidence of the same conflict 800 years ago." Amanda stared at him in shock. "You mean there are other sites like this?" "Dozens of them," Colonel Harrison confirmed. "The battle between humans and the Zephyrians was much larger than what you see here. It stretched across the entire solar system and lasted for several months." Lisa stepped forward with her translation notes in hand. "But how is this possible? Medieval humans didn't have the technology for interplanetary warfare." Colonel Harrison looked uncomfortable as he answered. "That's where the situation becomes complicated. The truth is that medieval humans achieved technological advancement far beyond what history books record. After the victory over the Zephyrians, there was a deliberate effort to hide that advancement." Ryan shook his head in disbelief. "You're saying that human civilization voluntarily gave up advanced technology?" "Not voluntarily," Colonel Harrison replied. "The cost of the war was enormous. Entire kingdoms spent everything they had to build the defense fleet. Millions of people died in the fighting. After the victory, Earth's survivors decided that such power was too dangerous to keep." Amanda began to understand the implications of what Colonel Harrison was telling them. So they destroyed their own technology and pretended it never existed. "More than that," Colonel Harrison said. "They created false historical records. They spread stories that made the advanced technology seem like magic or mythology. Within a few generations, most people believed the old tales were just legends." Kevin pointed to the wreckage around them. "But they couldn't hide all the evidence." "They tried," Colonel Harrison replied. "Most of the human spacecraft were deliberately destroyed after the war. The battle sites were left alone because they were considered memorials to the dead. Over time, people forgot where they were located." Amanda felt overwhelmed by the scope of the cover-up. An entire chapter of human history had been deliberately erased. The greatest military victory in human history had been reduced to forgotten legends. "Why are you telling us this?" Lisa asked. Colonel Harrison's expression became serious. "Because your discovery threatens to expose the truth, and that could have dangerous consequences for Earth's current situation." He explained that Earth's relationship with other alien species in the galaxy was based on the assumption that humans were a young, relatively peaceful race. Most alien civilizations saw Earth as harmless because humans had never demonstrated advanced military capabilities. "If the galaxy learns that medieval humans defeated the Zephyrian Empire, everything changes," Colonel Harrison said. "The Zephyrians were one of the most feared military powers in this part of the galaxy. Their defeat by primitive humans would be seen as proof that our species is extremely dangerous." Amanda understood the problem immediately. Other alien species would see us as a threat. "Exactly," Colonel Harrison confirmed. "Instead of trade partners and allies, we would become targets for preventive attacks. Several alien civilizations have policies of destroying any species that shows potential for becoming a galactic threat." Ryan looked at the medieval armor and weapons scattered among the alien wreckage. "So our ancestors' greatest victory could become our greatest danger?" Colonel Harrison nodded grimly. "Earth Defense Command has spent centuries building peaceful relationships with dozens of alien species. We have trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense treaties. All of that would disappear if the truth about the Zephyrian War became known." Lisa held up her translation notes. "But this is incredible history. Humanity deserves to know about William Fletcher and the brave people who saved our world." "I understand your feelings," Colonel Harrison said. "But consider the consequences. Would you rather have humanity know about one ancient victory, or have humanity survive to achieve many future victories? Amanda walked among the wreckage, thinking about the choice they were being offered. The evidence around them proved that humans were capable of incredible courage and ingenuity when faced with impossible odds. But revealing that proof could put the entire human species at risk. "What exactly are you asking us to do?" Amanda asked. Colonel Harrison pulled out a folder containing official documents. Earth Defense Command has a classified research division that studies sites like this. 1. We offer your team positions in that division with generous salaries and unlimited research funding. You would continue your work, but the results would remain classified. Kevin looked at the offer documents. "And if we refuse?" "Then your research will be classified under the Interstellar Security Act," Colonel Harrison replied. "Your findings will be sealed for national security reasons. The site will be restricted, and your team will be reassigned to other projects." Amanda realized they were not really being given a choice. Either way, their discovery would be hidden from the public. The only question was whether they would be part of the cover-up or victims of it. Lisa and Ryan looked to Amanda for guidance. As the team leader, the decision was ultimately hers to make. But she could see in their eyes that they were thinking the same thing she was. This discovery was too important to be buried forever. "We need time to discuss this," Amanda said. Colonel Harrison checked his watch. "You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Either you join our classified program, or your research ends here." After Colonel Harrison left, Amanda's team gathered in the Luna Base conference room to talk about their options. The weight of the decision pressed down on all of them. They held in their hands proof of humanity's greatest achievement, but sharing that proof could endanger the entire species. "Maybe there's a third option," Lisa suggested. "Maybe we can find a way to preserve the truth without exposing it immediately." Ryan nodded in agreement. "We could document everything and store it safely. Future generations might find a better time to reveal what really happened here." Amanda looked out the window at Earth hanging in the black sky. Somewhere down there, people went about their daily lives not knowing that their medieval ancestors had fought and won a war among the stars. The heroes of that ancient battle deserve to be remembered, but the people living today deserve to be protected. As she watched Earth slowly rotate, Amanda began to form a plan that might allow them to honor the past while protecting the future. It would require careful planning and patient waiting, but it might be the only way to preserve the truth without destroying the peace. 1 year later, Amanda stood in the main hall of the Museum of Early Space Exploration in Washington, D.C. The building was filled with visitors who had come to see the new exhibit featuring artifacts from humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. What they did not know was that they were looking at the wreckage of Earth's greatest military victory. Amanda had accepted the position as museum director after long discussions with her team. Kevin and Ryan had joined the classified research division, where they continued studying the battle sites in secret. Lisa had taken a teaching position, but secretly worked on translating more of the alien records they had found. The museum exhibit told a carefully crafted story. The Zephyrian artifacts were described as remains from ancient alien traders who had visited Earth centuries ago. The weapon damage on the ships was explained as wear from long interstellar journeys. Information panels described peaceful contact between humans and aliens in Earth's distant past. Families walked through the exhibit reading the false information and marveling at the advanced alien technology. Children pressed their faces against the display cases, excited to see real spacecraft from the stars. Their parents took pictures and read aloud from the sanitized descriptions that painted the aliens as friendly visitors. Amanda watched the visitors and felt a mixture of pride and sadness. She was proud that they had found a way to preserve the artifacts and make them available to the public. But she was sad that the true story of human courage and sacrifice could not be told. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a section of William Fletcher's flagship, the wooden spacecraft that had led humanity's defense fleet. The information panel described it as an example of how ancient humans had tried to copy alien technology they did not understand. Visitors looked at the crude wooden construction and smiled at what they thought was primitive human ignorance. Amanda, had worked carefully with Colonel Harrison to design the exhibit. Every piece had been chosen to show the artifacts without revealing their true significance. The most obviously human-made items were kept in storage, away from public view. Only the most ambiguous pieces were displayed. Late in the evening, after the museum had closed to the public, Amanda would return to walk among the exhibits alone. She would stand before the alien wreckage and remember the real story of what had happened in space 800 years ago. In the quiet darkness, she could almost hear the voices of the medieval warriors who had given their lives to save Earth. On this particular evening, Amanda was making her usual after-hours visit when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a young boy, maybe 10 years old, standing near the main display case. He should not have been in the museum after closing time. "Excuse me," Amanda said, walking over to the boy. "The museum is closed. How did you get in here?" The boy looked up at her with serious eyes. "My name is Danny Peterson. I was hiding in the bathroom when everyone left. I wanted to look at the alien ships without all the crowds." Amanda should have called security immediately, but something about the boy's expression made her pause. He was studying the artifacts with an intensity that reminded her of herself as a young scientist. "What do you think about the exhibit?" Amanda asked. Danny frowned as he looked at the damaged alien hull. "The story doesn't make sense. If these aliens were just peaceful traders, why do their ships have so much battle damage? And why are their human-made weapons mixed in with the alien parts?" Amanda felt her heart skip a beat. The boy had noticed details that most adult visitors missed completely. "What makes you think there are human weapons here?" Danny pointed to a piece of metal that Amanda recognized as part of a medieval sword blade. "That's iron forged using old blacksmith techniques. I've been studying medieval history for a school project. This metal is definitely from Earth's Middle Ages." Amanda stared at the young boy in amazement. He had figured out in one visit what the museum's designers had tried to hide from thousands of visitors. "You're very observant," Amanda said carefully. "What do you think really happened here?" Danny looked around to make sure they were alone, then spoke in a whisper. "I think these aliens came to attack Earth a long time ago, and I think somehow the people back then fought them and won. But nobody wants to admit it because it would be too scary." Amanda felt tears forming in her eyes. This 10-year-old boy had understood the truth that an entire civilization was trying to keep secret. She looked into his eager young face and made a decision that would change both their lives. "Danny, what would you say if I told you a story about the greatest battle in human history? A battle where brave men and women saved our entire world from slavery, but nobody remembers their names?" Danny's eyes grew wide with excitement. "I would want to hear every word of that story." Amanda sat down on a bench in front of the main display and gestured for Danny to join her. She looked around the empty museum one more time, then began to speak in a quiet voice. 800 years ago, a powerful alien empire called the Zephyrians decided to conquer Earth. They came with hundreds of massive warships and weapons that could destroy entire cities. Earth's people had only swords and horses and wooden shields. Danny listened with complete attention as Amanda told him about William Fletcher and the United Kingdoms of Earth. She described how medieval humans had built crude spacecraft using captured alien technology. She explained the desperate battle, tactics, and the courage of knights who fought aliens in space wearing improvised armor. As she spoke, Amanda realized she was not just telling Danny a story. She was planting a seed that might grow into something larger. This boy would remember what she told him, and someday he might find a way to share the truth with others. When Amanda finished the story, Danny sat quietly for a long time, thinking about everything he had heard. Finally, he looked up at her with determination in his young eyes. "Somebody should write this story down so people don't forget it completely," he said. Amanda smiled and handed him a small notebook from her purse. "Why don't you start by writing down what I just told you? And maybe someday, when you're older, you can help find a way to tell this story to the world." Danny took the notebook and immediately began writing in careful handwriting. As Amanda watched him work, she realized that the truth about humanity's greatest victory would survive after all. It might be hidden for now, but it would not be forgotten. The hall. museum around them was filled with lies and half-truths designed to protect the present by burying the past. But in one young boy's notebook, the real story of human courage and sacrifice lived on, waiting for the right time to be told to a world that desperately needed to remember what its people were capable of achieving. The morning sun rose over Haven Prime like it had for the past 3 years since humans first arrived. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the defense station, watching the golden light spread across the green valleys below. His coffee was still warm in his hands as he looked down at the world his people now called home. 50,000 humans lived on Haven Prime now. They had built cities that looked like Earth cities, with parks and schools and shopping centers. But these cities were different. They shared the land with the Keplers, the plant-like beings who had lived here for thousands of years. The Kepler buildings grew from the ground like giant trees, their walls made of living wood that changed colors with the seasons. Jake's wife Lisa worked down there in the medical center. She spent her days learning Kepler medicine, which used living plants to heal injuries and cure diseases. The Keplers had taught her things that no human doctor had ever known. In return, she taught them about human biology and shared Earth's medical knowledge. Their daughter Amy went to school with Kepler children. She could speak their whistling language almost as well as English now. Jake smiled, thinking about how she would come home and teach him new Kepler words, her face lighting up when she talked about her alien friends. Life was good here. Life was peaceful. Jake remembered the old days when humans fought wars among themselves back on Earth. His grandfather had told him stories about the last Great War, when humans had built weapons that could destroy entire cities. Those days were over now. The Galactic Coalition had helped humanity put those dark times behind them. For 30 years, humans had been model citizens of the galaxy. They followed all the peace treaties. They had gotten rid of most of their weapons. They used their military only for defense, never for attack. The other alien species in the coalition praised humans for changing their violent ways. Steve Rogers ran the small defense fleet that protected Haven Prime. He had 6 patrol ships, all of them old and used mainly for rescue missions and asteroid clearing. Steve often joked that his biggest problem was keeping the ships running, not fighting enemies. There were no enemies here. The Keplers were not warriors. They were farmers and scientists and artists. Their leader, Elder Blossom of Understanding, had welcomed the humans with open arms. She said that 2 different kinds of life could learn much from each other. Maria Santos kept the defense systems working. The orbital platforms had weapons, but they were old models designed to stop asteroids and space junk, not enemy fleets. Maria sometimes wondered if they would even work in a real fight, but there had never been a real fight to test them. Down on the planet, Helen Carter managed the daily business of the colony. She worked with Elder Blossom of Understanding to make sure humans and Keplers shared resources fairly. They had built something beautiful together, a world where 2 completely different species lived as friends and neighbors. Tony Blake was one of the few humans who worried about their peaceful life. He was a sergeant major in the small garrison that kept order in the human settlements. Tony had served in the old military before the peace treaties. He remembered when human soldiers were feared throughout their part of space. Sometimes Tony would look at the young soldiers under his command and shake his head. They were good people, but they had never seen real combat. They had trained for patrols and crowd control and disaster relief. They knew how to help people, not how to fight wars. But Tony kept his worries to himself. Everyone else seemed happy with the peaceful life. The coalition representatives who visited Haven Prime always complimented the humans on how well they had adapted to galactic civilization. They said humans were proof that even the most violent species could learn to live in peace. The children who grew up on Haven Prime had never known war. Amy Morrison and her friends, both human and Kepler, played games and studied science and dreamed of exploring the stars. They lived in a world where the biggest problems were homework and what to have for lunch. The days passed quietly on Haven Prime. Farmers grew crops in fields that stretched to the horizon. Scientists studied new forms of life. Artists created works that blended human and Kepler styles. Traders brought goods from other worlds and left with Haven Prime's famous biomedicines and agricultural products. No one paid much attention to the news reports about the Vorthon Empire. The Vorthans were warriors who conquered other worlds, but they stayed far away from Coalition space. They were smart enough not to fight the Coalition directly. Everyone said the Vorthons would never be foolish enough to attack a Coalition world. The outer colonies were far from Haven Prime. When the communication signals from those distant worlds began to fade, most people assumed it was just equipment, problems. Space was big, and sometimes messages got lost or delayed. It happened all the time. Coalition Command sent a few messages about being ready for possible evacuations, but no one took them seriously. The bureaucrats at Coalition headquarters were always worrying about something. They sent warnings about solar flares and asteroid swarms and trade disputes. Most of the time, nothing happened. Jake Morrison finished his coffee and prepared for another quiet day of managing traffic control and weather monitoring. Steve Rogers checked his patrol schedules and planned routine maintenance for his aging ships. Maria Santos ran diagnostics on weapons systems that had not fired a shot in anger for 3 years. Down on Haven Prime, Lisa Morrison arrived at the medical center where she would spend the day working alongside Kepler healers. Helen Carter reviewed supply requests and trade agreements. Amy Morrison packed her school bag and prepared to learn about Kepler poetry. None of them knew that massive fleets were moving through space toward them. None of them suspected that their peaceful world was about to become a memory. None of them imagined that the galaxy was about to remember why humans had once been the most dangerous species in their corner of space. The sun climbed higher over Haven Prime, and life continued as it always had. Peaceful, prosperous, and completely unprepared for what was coming. The attack came without warning on a Tuesday morning. Jake Morrison was drinking his second cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed across every screen on the defense station. His hands shook as he read the sensor data. 30 massive ships had just appeared in space around Haven Prime. They were bigger than anything he had ever seen. The ships were black and covered with spikes. They looked like giant metal insects floating in space. Jake had never seen designs like these, but he knew what they were. Vorthon warships. The monsters from the Outer Rim had come to Haven Prime. Jake grabbed his communicator and tried to call the planet. Static filled the channel. The Vorthons had jammed all communications. He tried the emergency channels. Nothing. The backup systems. Still, nothing. Haven Prime was cut off from the galaxy. Steve Rogers was on the bridge of his flagship when the attack began. His 6 patrol ships were spread out across the system, doing routine checks on mining platforms. When the Vorthon fleet appeared, Steve ordered his ships to form up for defense. He knew it was hopeless, but he had to try. The first Vorthon ship to fire was twice the size of Steve's entire fleet. Green energy beams shot out from its weapons. The patrol ship defender exploded in a ball of fire. No time for the crew to escape. No time to send a distress call. Just fire and death and floating metal. Steve watched 4 more of his ships die in the first minute. The Vorthons did not miss. Their weapons cut through the patrol ships like knives through paper. Steve's own ship was hit 3 times, but somehow kept flying. Sparks flew from broken panels around him. The smell of smoke filled the bridge. Down on Haven Prime, the first bombs fell on the Kepler city of gentle winds through leaves. The city had been home to 50,000 Keplers. It took the Vorthons 30 seconds to turn it into a crater of burning glass. The living buildings screamed as they died, their cries echoing across the valley. Lisa Morrison was in the medical center when the ground shook. She ran outside and looked up at the sky. Fire was falling from space like rain. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from where the Kepler cities had been. Her heart pounded as she realized what was happening. Amy Morrison was in school. When the teacher told everyone to hide under their desks, Amy could hear explosions getting closer. Through the window, she saw Vorthon ships flying low over the city. They were shooting at anything that moved. Cars, buildings, people running in the streets. The ships did not care what they hit. The Vorthons did not just attack military targets. They attacked everything. Hospitals, schools, playgrounds. They seemed to enjoy destroying places where children lived and played. Their weapons turned homes into ash and families into memories. Helen Carter tried to surrender. She stood in the colony's main square with a white flag, broadcasting on all frequencies. She begged the Vorthons to stop the killing. She offered to give them anything they wanted: food, medicine, the colony's entire treasury, anything to save lives. The Vorthon response was to drop a bomb on the square. Helen had just enough time to see the bright flash before everything went white. The explosion left a hole where the colony's government building had been. Helen Carter and everyone with her simply vanished. Tony Blake gathered his small garrison and tried to fight back. His soldiers had training but no real weapons. Their equipment was designed for keeping peace, not for war. They had stun guns and riot shields. The Vorthons had plasma cannons and battle armor. Tony watched his young soldiers die trying to protect civilians. They were brave and they fought hard, but they might as well have been throwing rocks at dragons. The Vorthons cut through them like they were not even there. Tony himself took 3 plasma hits but kept fighting until his body would not move anymore. Elder Blossom of Understanding tried to save her people. She led a group of Kepler families toward the mountains, hoping to hide in the deep caves where her ancestors had once lived. The Vorthons hunted them down with flying machines that could see in the dark. The Keplers were not fighters. They had never built weapons or trained soldiers. They had lived in peace for thousands of years. Now they died in fear and confusion, not understanding why anyone would want to hurt them. Their last thoughts were of the gardens they would never see bloom. The massacre continued for 2 days. The Vorthons killed everything they found: old people who could not run, children who tried to hide, wounded soldiers who begged for mercy. They recorded everything, sending the videos to other worlds as a warning of what happened to those who opposed them. Jake Morrison watched from his damaged station as his world died below him. He could see the fires burning where cities had been. He could track the Vorthon kill squads as they hunted down the last survivors. He counted the dead by watching life signs disappear from his sensors. Lisa Morrison died on the 2nd day. She had been trying to treat wounded people in a makeshift hospital when the Vorthons found her. Jake watched through a security camera as they lined up the patients and doctors and shot them one by one. Lisa looked up at the camera just before the end, as if she knew he was watching. Amy Morrison had been in a group of children hiding in the school basement. The Vorthons found them on the 2nd morning. They made the children watch as they killed the teachers first. Then they worked their way through the children, starting with the youngest. Amy was near the end of the line. Elder Blossom of Understanding was dying when she made her last transmission. She had been shot and burned, but she held on long enough to send one message to Jake Morrison. Her voice was weak but clear as she spoke. "Tell your people," she whispered. "Tell them the Vorthons enjoy causing pain. They are not warriors fighting for a cause. They are monsters who kill because they like to kill. Tell your people to remember that." By the end of the 2nd day, Haven Prime was silent. 50,000 humans were dead. 200,000 Keplers had been murdered. The Vorthons had not tried to capture the planet or steal its resources. They had simply destroyed everything and everyone they found. The few survivors, less than 3,000 people, escaped in damaged ships. They carried with them video recordings of the massacre and a simple message for Earth. The galaxy's peaceful humans were about to remember why their ancestors had once conquered their entire home system. The Vorthons left Haven Prime as a burned wasteland. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had let some humans live to tell the story. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, had very long memories when it came to their children being murdered. The news of Haven Prime reached Earth on a cold morning in March. The surviving ships had jumped through hyperspace for 6 days, carrying their terrible cargo of death and recordings. When they finally reached Earth's outer defense ring, their transmissions caused the biggest emergency meeting in human history. President Nicole Adams sat in the emergency council room, watching the recordings from Haven Prime. She did not speak for the first hour. She just watched as her screen showed children being murdered and peaceful aliens being hunted like animals. When the recordings ended, the room was completely silent. The other council members waited for her to speak. Some expected her to call for sanctions against the Vorthon Empire. Others thought she would ask the Galactic Coalition for military support. A few believed she would propose sending humanitarian aid to help rebuild Haven Prime. Nicole Adams did none of these things. She stood up slowly and looked around the room at the other human leaders. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke, but every word carried the weight of 50,000 dead humans. "The discussion is over," she said. "The vote will be simple. Do we continue to pretend we are peaceful, or do we remember who we really are?" The vote took 47 minutes. Every human representative voted the same way. For the first time, in 30 years, humanity officially left the Galactic Coalition peace treaties. All military restrictions were canceled. All weapon limitations were removed. The old human military was officially brought back to life. Admiral Chris Parker had been retired for 15 years. He lived on a quiet farm where he grew vegetables and read old books about military history. When the call came, he was feeding chickens in his backyard. 2 hours later, he was standing in the command center of Luna Base, looking at reports he had hoped never to see again. The orders were simple and terrible. Full military mobilization, total war authorization, no restrictions on weapons or tactics. Chris Parker had fought in the last human war 30 years ago. He remembered what humans were capable of when they stopped pretending to be civilized. The old shipyards on Luna and Mars had been shut down for decades. Most people thought they had been turned into museums or storage facilities. They were wrong. The yards had been kept in perfect working condition, maintained by automated systems that waited patiently for orders that everyone hoped would never come. Now those orders came. Within hours, the yards were building ships again. But these were not the small patrol boats that humans had used for peaceful missions. These were warships designed by people who understood that sometimes peace was only possible after your enemies were too dead to break it. Dr. Ben Rodriguez had been teaching history at a small college when the call came. He had once been the head of the Human Weapons Development Division, before the peace treaties forced him into retirement. His students knew him as a gentle professor who loved poetry and classical music. They had no idea what he had created in the dark years before the peace. Ben arrived at the secret facility beneath the Colorado mountains to find thousands of other retired scientists and engineers. They had all been living normal, peaceful lives. They had all been waiting for this day, hoping it would never come, but knowing it eventually would. The weapons they had designed 30 years ago had been hidden, not destroyed. The Galactic Coalition had demanded that humans get rid of their military technology. The humans had agreed, and then hidden everything in places where only they could find it. Some weapons were buried on airless moons. Others were stored in the dark between stars. All of them were waiting. Kate Johnson was the human ambassador to the Galactic Coalition. She had spent 10 years trying to convince other species that humans were peaceful and civilized. She had given speeches about human redemption and the power of choosing peace over war. When the Coalition demanded that humans honor their peaceful commitments, Kate Johnson stood before the Galactic Assembly and gave a very different kind of speech. "You praised us for becoming peaceful," she said. "You celebrated when we put away our weapons. You told the galaxy that humans had learned to be civilized. But you made one mistake. You assumed we had become peaceful because we were weak. You never asked if we had simply chosen to be peaceful because we were strong enough to make that choice." She paused and looked around the assembly hall at representatives from dozens of alien species. Many of them had never seen a human show anger before. "That choice has been revoked," she said. "You will now remember why we were so good at being peaceful. It was because we were even better at being something else." On every human world, military recruitment centers were overwhelmed by volunteers. But these were not typical military recruits. These were farmers whose friends had died on Haven Prime. These were teachers who had seen the recordings of children being murdered. These were shopkeepers and mechanics, and students who had finally seen what the galaxy really looked like when humans were not around to keep the monsters in check. General Rick Davis came out of retirement to train the new army. He was 70 years old, but he remembered every lesson from the old wars. He gathered other retired officers and began teaching young humans things that had not been taught in 30 years. They learned how to fight wars that were not about territory or resources. They learned how to fight wars that were about making sure your enemy could never threaten anyone again. They learned strategies that were designed not to win battles, but to make examples that would prevent future wars. The Vorthan Empire monitored human communications and laughed at what they saw. Their intelligence reports described humans as soft and militarily insignificant. They had conquered dozens of worlds and fought hundreds of species. They were not worried about the peaceful humans and their outdated military. This was the greatest mistake in the history of the galaxy. The first new human warships were launched 3 months after Haven Prime. They had names like Vengeance and Retribution and Never Again. But the ship that worried other species the most was Admiral Parker's flagship. It was bigger than anything humans had built before, covered with weapons that no one recognized, and painted black as the space between stars. It was called the HSV Reckoning, and it was heading for Vorthan space. The galaxy watched nervously as humanity prepared for war. Some species offered to mediate. Others suggested economic sanctions. A few proposed creating a buffer zone between human and Vorthan territory. Admiral Parker's response was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. His message was short and simple. We tried peace. They gave us Haven Prime. Now they will learn what we were like before we decided to be nice. The age of peaceful humanity was over. The age of reckoning was about to begin. 6 months after Haven Prime, the human fleet appeared at the edge of Vorthan space like a storm made of metal and fire. Admiral Chris Parker stood on the bridge of the HSV Reckoning, looking at the enemy ships that filled his screens. He did not call for surrender. He did not demand negotiations. He simply gave the order that ended 30 years of human peace. Begin the Kepler Protocol, he said. The Kepler Protocol was named after the gentle plant people who had died alongside humans. On Haven Prime, it was simple and terrible. No Vorthan world would be given the chance to surrender. No Vorthan ship would be allowed to retreat. No Vorthan would live to threaten another peaceful species. The first target was Vorthak Prime, the industrial heart of the Vorthan Empire. The planet was protected by hundreds of orbital defense platforms and a fleet of 200 warships. The Vorthans had never lost a major battle. They were confident they could destroy the human fleet. They were wrong about everything. The attack began with something the Vorthans had never seen before. Human ships released clouds of tiny machines, smaller than dust particles that floated through space like a metal fog. The machines were intelligent. They found Vorthan ships and computers and defense systems, and they began to change them. Within minutes, Vorthan weapons turned on their own ships. Defense platforms fired on the fleet they were supposed to protect. Computer systems shut down, or began following human commands instead of Vorthan ones. The enemy found themselves fighting their own technology. Jake Morrison commanded a destroyer called the Payback. He had survived Haven Prime and asked to serve on the ship that would return the favor. The Payback did not use normal weapons. Instead, it fired clouds of microscopic machines that ate metal and plastic and anything else they touched. Jake watched through his view screen as Vorthan battleships simply fell apart. The tiny machines dissolved hull plating and support beams and life support systems. Vorthan crews found themselves floating in space as their ships vanished around them like ice melting in hot water. The weapons that Dr. Ben Rodriguez had created were beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Human ships fired gravity bombs that created tiny black holes in space. The black holes lasted only seconds, but they tore apart everything within 1,000 kilometers. Entire Vorthan fleets were crushed into balls of twisted metal. Other human ships used quantum torpedoes that passed through shields and armor like they were not there. The torpedoes appeared inside enemy ships and exploded from within. Vorthan captains watched their own bridge explode around them while their shields showed no damage at all. But the most terrifying weapon was something Dr. Rodriguez called the consciousness trap. It was a computer virus that infected Vorthan brains through their communication implants. The virus trapped Vorthan minds in endless loops of their worst memories and fears. Vorthan soldiers would stop fighting and just scream, lost in digital nightmares that felt completely real. The humans did not stop with military targets. General Rick Davis had created something called the Total Accountability Doctrine. Every Vorthon civilian who had cheered the Haven Prime massacre, every politician who had supported the war, every citizen who had done nothing to stop the killings, would be held responsible. Human ships orbited Vorthon worlds and used precision strikes to eliminate specific people. They would destroy a single house on a street full of houses, killing only the person inside who had celebrated human deaths. They left the innocent neighbors untouched, but the guilty simply disappeared in flashes of light. The psychological warfare was just as devastating as the physical attacks. Human ships broadcast the dying screams of Vorthon crews across all communication channels. Every Vorthon in the Empire could hear their soldiers crying for mercy that would never come. Human ships used holographic projectors to show Vorthon families exactly how their military was dying. They broadcast images of Vorthon ships being dissolved by nanomachines, of Vorthon crews floating in space as their vessels fell apart around them. The message was clear. This is what happens when you murder children. When Vorthon leaders finally tried to negotiate, Admiral Parker's response became famous throughout the galaxy. The Vorthon Emperor himself called the human flagship, begging to discuss terms of surrender. "You had your chance for mercy," Parker told him. "It was on Haven Prime, when you were slaughtering children who had never hurt anyone. We are not here to accept your surrender. We are here to make sure you never get the chance to surrender again." The Galactic Coalition watched in horror as humanity showed why they had once been the most feared species in their part of space. Coalition representatives sent desperate messages begging humans to show restraint, to remember their peaceful principles. President Nicole Adams broadcast her response to the entire galaxy. She stood in the White House press room, wearing a black dress in memory of the Haven Prime dead, and spoke directly to every species that was watching. "We tried peace," she said. "We gave up our weapons and followed your treaties. We became the model citizens you wanted us to be. And when monsters came to murder our children, where were you? Where was the coalition when Haven Prime was burning?" She paused and looked directly into the camera. "You praised us for learning to be peaceful. You never understood that we were peaceful because we chose to be. That choice has consequences. When you murder our families, you remind us why we were good, at peace. It was because we were even better at war." The Vorthon Empire tried everything to stop the human advance. They used weapons of mass destruction. They took hostages. They begged other species to intervene. Nothing worked. Human ships kept coming, and Vorthon worlds kept dying. The final assault on the Vorthon homeworld lasted 3 days. When it was over, the planet was empty. Not destroyed, but empty. Every Vorthon was gone, their consciousness trapped in the digital hell that Dr. Rodriguez had created for them. The planet's cities stood untouched but silent as graves. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the reckoning as the last Vorthon ship died in the cold of space. Around him, his officers waited for orders. The Vorthon Empire was finished, but the human fleet was still at full strength. "Set course for Coalition space," Parker said quietly. "It's time to have a conversation about the new rules." The galaxy was about to learn that peaceful humans were gone forever. In their place was something much older and much more dangerous. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans were like when they stopped being nice. Now they knew. The Vorthon War ended 18 months after it began. It did not end with peace talks or surrender ceremonies. It ended when the last Vorthon died, and their entire species became nothing more than a warning to the galaxy about what happened when you made humans angry. The final battle was not fought on some distant battlefield. It was fought in the Vorthon Emperor's own throne room, broadcast live to every world in the galaxy. The Emperor had been captured alive by Lieutenant Jack Morrison, the son of Jake Morrison who had died defending Haven Prime. Jack Morrison had been born during the war and trained from childhood to be a weapon of vengeance. He was 19 years old when he kicked down the doors of the Imperial Palace and dragged the Vorthon Emperor out to face human justice. The galaxy watched as the being who had ordered the Haven Prime massacre was forced to kneel before a teenager who had never known peace. The Emperor's execution lasted 3 days. It was not quick or merciful. Dr. Rodriguez had designed special equipment to keep the Emperor alive and conscious, while every pain receptor in his body was activated. The Emperor experienced every moment of agony that the children of Haven Prime had felt, multiplied by 1,000. The galaxy watched in horror, but they could not look away. Every species that had ever considered humans to be weak saw what happened when humans decided to be strong instead. When it was over, humanity did not return to their peaceful ways. They had learned something important during the war. Peace was only valuable when you had the strength to protect it. The human defense fleet became the human supremacy fleet, and their message to the galaxy was simple and clear. Admiral Parker established the new doctrine from the Bridge of the Reckoning. He broadcast it to every world, every species, every government in known space. His words were translated into 1,000 languages, but the meaning was the same everywhere. Any species that threatens human civilians will be extinct within 1 year, he said. Any species that supports such threats will be extinct within 1 year. Any species that has the power to prevent such threats but chooses not to will face corrective action. The galaxy understood. Humanity was no longer asking to be treated with respect. They were demanding it, and they had the weapons to enforce their demands. The Galactic Coalition tried to condemn humanity's actions. They called emergency sessions and passed resolutions, and made speeches about the importance of peaceful solutions. But their protests sounded hollow when half their member species were secretly negotiating defense agreements with humanity. Everyone remembered that humans had been peaceful by choice, not because they were weak. Everyone understood that the peaceful humans were gone, replaced by humans who remembered why their ancestors had once conquered their entire home system before they even left their planet. Dr. Rodriguez was given unlimited resources to create new weapons. His first project was called the Deterrent Demonstration. It was a weapon that could sterilize entire star systems, turning planets into lifeless rocks floating in space. He tested it publicly on the former Vorthan homeworld, just to make sure everyone understood what would happen to species that forgot the new rules. The survivors of Haven Prime were offered a choice. They could return to civilian life with full honors and enough money to live comfortably forever. Or they could join the new human colonial security force and make sure that what happened to Haven Prime would never happen again. Most of them chose to serve. They became known throughout the galaxy as the Haven Guard, humans who had seen what happened when their species showed mercy to those who did not deserve it. They were stationed on every human world, watching and waiting for the next species that might think humans had gone soft. Helen Carter had survived the massacre by being in the underground shelter when the bombs fell. She had spent 2 days buried under rubble, listening to her friends die above her. Now she ran the new colonial defense program, making sure that every human settlement was protected by weapons that could destroy attacking fleets before they got close. More importantly, every human child now received military training from age 6. They learned to shoot and fight and think like soldiers. They studied the recordings from Haven Prime and learned what happened to peaceful people when monsters came calling. The galaxy's children would never again be helpless victims. The galaxy learned to live with the new reality. Trade continued and diplomacy functioned, but everyone understood the rules now. Humanity was back to being humanity, and they were not asking permission for anything. Some species tried to test the new rules. A race called the Bracken attacked a human mining station, thinking it would be an easy target. The Bracken homeworld was a cloud of radioactive gas within 6 hours. Their entire species was extinct before sunset. Other species learned from the Bracken's mistake. They treated humans with careful respect and made sure their citizens understood that bothering humans was a form of suicide. Peace returned to the galaxy, but it was a different kind of peace. It was peace enforced by the certainty that breaking it would result in immediate and total extinction. Jake Morrison had died on Haven Prime, but his memory lived on in the new human fleet. His son Jack became Admiral Jack Morrison, commanding a ship called the HSV Haven's Vengeance. The ship patrolled the outer colonies, making sure that no one would ever again mistake human kindness for human weakness. One day, Jack's own daughter asked him if he missed the old days when humans were peaceful and everyone liked them. She was training as a junior officer, learning to carry on the family tradition of protecting human civilians. Jack looked out at the stars and thought about his grandfather, who had died trying to save children on a world that no longer existed. He thought about the peaceful life his family had tried to live, and the monsters who had decided that peace was weakness. Peace was nice while it lasted, he told his daughter, but some people only understand violence, and we happen to be very good at speaking that language. The girl nodded and went back to her weapons training. She was part of the new generation of humans, raised to be strong instead of gentle, taught to fight instead of hoping for the best. She would never know the innocent peace that her great-grandfather had enjoyed, but she would also never be helpless when monsters came calling. The story of Haven Prime became required learning in every human school. Children learned about the gentle Keplers who had welcomed humans as friends, and about the Vorthons who had repaid friendship with murder. They learned that being good was important, but being strong was necessary. The galaxy settled into its new routine. Species that wanted to live in peace found that humans were excellent neighbors as long as the peace was real. Species that preferred violence discovered that humans were even better at violence than they were at peace. And somewhere in the cold of space, the ghost of Elder Blossom of Understanding rested peacefully, knowing that her final message had been heard and understood. The gentle plant being had asked humans to remember what the Vorthons really were. Humanity had remembered, and they had made sure that no one would ever forget.